we're looking at interpreting or understanding the data. So we're going to be looking at reading graphs, and then from our graphs being able to understand what they mean. Okay, so when we look at graphs, they should include the following: a title, the axes clearly labelled and including any units. So for example, if we're talking about height, we're going to include, centimetres or metres, or if we're talking about years, we'll write that we're including years. And then they must be regular scales, so that's evenly spaced, like our Cartesian planes. They have to be evenly spaced apart. And then most or some will include a legend or a key. Okay, so here we have an example. We've got a nice title, some subtitles. The axes are clearly labelled, and it's very easy to distinguish what's what. So let's look at the different graphs. So first we have a column graph. So a column graph shows the frequency of categorical data. And as you can see, it's represented by these vertical columns, and they have spaces between them, and that's important to remember. So make sure you cut this out, stick it in, and write down the description for each graph. The next one is a histogram. So this is similar to a column graph. It represents, in this case, it's actually representing height. But the difference is that it has no gaps between the bars. Okay. Bar graph. So again, like a column graph, and it represents categorical data, but these are horizontal. So vertical is up, horizontal is across. So a pie graph. A pie graph shows the frequency of categorical data again, but it's as part of a whole. So we split one whole circle into a certain number, depending on how many options there are, and then it's represented as a bit of a percentage. Okay, so this Facebook looks like it's probably about 28% maybe, but that's just a guess. This is also a perfect example of a key, so we can clearly see what section belongs to what. A line graph. So a line graph shows continuous numerical data. We plot the points on the graph, and then we join the lines together, and we can easily see what we call a trend. So here, we don't know with this graph what units they're in or what we're actually referring to, because it was unlabelled, and I actually got this from the book, and it's an unlabelled graph. So this is where we can see that it makes it difficult to understand a graph if we don't have titles or headings. Now, sometimes with a graph we'll have a piece of data that's all the way to one side, and it's much higher or much lower than the other data, and we call that an outlier, and we see that in our numerical data. So an outlier, it's the piece of data that's disjointed or disconnected from the big group of data. So we can see here that that's our outlier. It's very separate from the rest. So let's do an example. So this column graph shows the results of a survey of Year 7 students and the sports they play. So let's have a look. Question A. Oh, I've got the answer there. But oh well, that's all right. What is the most common sport played and how many students played it? So the most common sport we can see is football, and 10 students play it. B, what's the least common sport played and how many students play it? Very clearly we've got badminton, but it's not on a line, so that means it's between 0 and 2. So what number comes between 0 and 2? 1. So C, how many sports are there in the survey? So we can see here there's 6 columns, which means there's 6 types of sports. And D, how many students were surveyed? Well, we would do this by adding up 8 plus 10 plus 4 plus 9 plus 1 plus 5, and our answer would give us 35 students. Example number 2, the line graph shows the number of customers per day in a new swim and surf store. So question A, what's the largest number of customers per day? So we go to the top, the highest point in our graph, which is 120. So it's 120 customers. And on which days did this occur? Well, we can see that occurred on day 7 and day 13. How many customers were in the shop on day 3? So we go to day 3. Where is my mouse? Oh well. Oh, there we go. That's what I need. So we go to day 3 and we go up, and we can see clearly it's Miss Tipping. What have you done? It's 60, not 90. It's supposed to say 60. 60 customers on day 3. I think that's the answer for question E. They got muddled up. So 60 customers visited day 3, and which day has 90 customers? So we go 90 here, and we go across till we find one of our dots. There it is. So day 12. So if we go back here, it says day 12. So there was a bit of a muddle up there. I don't know how that happened. And so that's it. So what you're going to do now is you're going to work through chapter 10b and answer those questions.